No other nation has ever vanished from the face of the earth for 2,000 years, then come back to life. And no prophecy in the history of mankind has proven more precise than this one. Israel scattered among the nations, then brought back exactly as God foretold. In the year 70 AD, Roman legions besieged Jerusalem, destroyed the Second Temple, and drove the Jewish people into exile. What followed was 2 millennia of dispersion across continents, under foreign rule, with no government, no army, no land, and seemingly no future. In the eyes of the world, Israel was a closed chapter in history. But in the eyes of God, it was the unfolding of a divine prophecy. Centuries before the destruction, prophets like Ezekiel and Jeremiah declared that the children of Israel would be scattered because of disobedience, yet they also proclaimed with unwavering clarity, in the last days the Lord would gather his people from every corner of the earth and bring them home. For I will take you from among the nations, gather you out of all countries, and bring you into your own land. Ezekiel 36:24. It sounded impossible, but it happened. On May 14, 1948, after nearly 2,000 years of exile, Israel was reborn. A nation erased from the map returned, on the same soil, with the same name, reviving the ancient Hebrew language and restoring a national identity older than Rome. This has no precedent in human history. No other people has been expelled from their homeland, survived centuries of foreign domination, and then reassembled in the same territory, under the same name, with the same calling. How does a people survive centuries without a homeland, scattered among hundreds of cultures, then return fully intact to the very place from which they were exiled? This defies logic. It defies coincidence. It demands attention. Digging deeper, we must ask, why did only Israel come back after 2,000 years? Could it be that the God of Abraham never forgot his covenant? Romans 11 declares that God has not rejected his people, and that their return is not just political, but prophetic. From the warnings in Leviticus to the promises in Ezekiel, the path from exile to restoration is clearly mapped in Scripture. And yet, despite the overwhelming evidence, many still deny the miracle of 1948, raising fierce debate over whether Israel's rebirth was destiny or coincidence. But for those who watch the signs, Israel's return is a trumpet blast in history, a divine alarm clock announcing that God's prophetic timeline has resumed. And at the very heart of that timeline stands one city, one ancient city, that continues to shake the nations. Not Washington, not Beijing, not Moscow. The city that holds the future of the world is no bigger than a small district. And yet it is Jerusalem, a city where prophecy, war, and divine power have collided more violently than anywhere else in history. Jerusalem has been attacked 52 times, captured and recaptured 44 times, besieged, burned, and reduced to rubble. Twice it was completely destroyed, but it has never been erased. From the days of King David and Solomon to the lightning victory of the Six-Day War in 1967, Jerusalem has remained at the center of religious passion, historical upheaval, and prophetic fulfillment. Why this city? Why would empires rise and fall, rivers of blood flow, and generations of conflict rage over this single location? The answer isn't found in economics or geography, it's found in Scripture. I have chosen Jerusalem so that my name might be there forever. Chronicles 33:7. When God chose Jerusalem as the place where his name would dwell, the battle lines were drawn, not just in the physical world, but in the spiritual realm. The struggle for Jerusalem is not merely political, it is cosmic, and the stakes are eternal. The prophet Zechariah declared, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the surrounding peoples." Zechariah 12:2. That prophecy, written more than 2,500 years ago, reads like today's headlines. Riots on the Temple Mount, global debates over sovereignty, embassies moved, peace deals proposed, rockets fired, and all eyes fixed on Jerusalem. This is not just a city, it is a declaration, a covenant city, a chosen place. And anyone who seeks to divide or possess Jerusalem without reverence for the God who owns it places themselves in direct opposition to him. How can a city smaller than Hanoi shake the foundations of empires? The answer is not in tanks or treaties, it is in a sacred promise. Jerusalem is the only city on earth where God has declared his eternal presence. It is the city of the King, the future seat of his rule, and the epicenter of the final chapters of human history. To explore further, we examine a deep dive documentary tracing Jerusalem in the Bible, from Melchizedek to the Second Coming, uncovering its unbroken thread through prophetic history. A theological investigation. Is Jerusalem the geographic center of God's eternal kingdom? Diving into millennial reign implications. A compare and contrast study of Jerusalem, ancient, modern, and the New Jerusalem of Revelation 21. A timeline expansion mapping every shift in control over Jerusalem, from Solomon's temple to modern political struggles. If Israel is the clock of prophecy, then Jerusalem is its pounding heart. And at the very center of that heart is the temple, the dwelling place of God's name. The day the temple rises again will not be ordinary, it will be explosive. Because when the temple returns, so does the fire of prophecy. Did you know that one of the most critical signs of the end times is being crafted, item by item, right now in the heart of Jerusalem? Not in secret, not in theory, but with real gold, real stone, and strict adherence to the instructions once given to Moses on Mount Sinai. In the heart of Israel, the Temple Institute is restoring every element of ancient worship. Golden menorahs, incense altars, priestly garments, and even the rare red heifer, each carefully reproduced according to the detailed commands of Exodus and Leviticus. This is not mere religious symbolism, it's a prophetic signal, sounding louder by the day. Because according to Scripture, the third temple must be rebuilt before many of the final prophecies can unfold. The rise of the Antichrist, the desecration of the sanctuary, the abomination of desolation. And now, nearly everything is ready. The vessels gleam, the blueprints are drawn. The training has begun. Beneath the ancient stones of Jerusalem, a spiritual fire is smoldering, quiet but unstoppable. And when it ignites, it won't just light up Israel, it will shake the entire Middle East. To expand this further, consider a what-if exploration. What if the third temple is constructed next year? How would that reshape global geopolitics and fulfill apocalyptic timelines? Or dive into a comparative study, the glory of Solomon's temple, the grandeur of Herod's temple, and the mystery surrounding the coming temple. For a focused investigation, explore the red heifer, the seemingly obscure requirement that holds enormous prophetic weight. With every vessel prepared, every priest trained, and every stone measured, we are inching toward a moment of prophetic combustion. And when the temple stands once more, it won't just be a structure, it will be the stage. The next act, a war unlike any the world has seen. A war where heaven itself intervenes. One day, 5 armies from 5 nations will converge on Israel, not for peace, not for diplomacy, but with a singular purpose: to wipe her off the map. With unmatched firepower and overwhelming numbers, they will move like a storm across the northern borders, sweeping down the Golan Heights. Iran, Turkey, Libya, Sudan, and Russia, names that echo through today's headlines, will unite in a coalition not seen since the Tower of Babel. But what they don't realize is that they're marching straight into a trap, one crafted not by Israel, but by the hand of heaven itself. The prophet Ezekiel laid it out thousands of years ago in chapters 38 and 39. He named the nations, he described the terrain, and he foretold the outcome. As the armies approach, the Lord himself intervenes. The ground beneath them begins to shake. Earthquakes fracture their formations. Torrential rain blinds their vision. Hailstones crush their armor. Fire rains from the skies, and in the confusion, chaos erupts from within. Ally turns on ally. Missiles misfire. Generals lose control. What began as an organized assault devolves into self-destruction, a supernatural unraveling, not by human strategy, but by divine justice. And the most astonishing part, Israel doesn't fire the first shot. In fact, she barely lifts a finger. Because this is not her battle, it is the Lord's. The nations of the earth will be stunned. Journalists will be speechless. Intelligence analysts will scramble for explanations, but none will make sense unless you open Ezekiel. What looked like certain doom becomes a miraculous deliverance. What seemed like the end becomes a declaration. Israel is not alone. She never was. To explore further, we examine the precise sequence of Ezekiel's prophecy, the names, the weapons, the terrain. A deep dive video could bring to life the strategy from both sides, showing how modern geopolitics is fulfilling ancient text. Or take a look at reaction videos from Israeli commanders during the 1967 Six-Day War, what some call a modern miracle, as a possible prophetic echo. A timeline expansion could trace every major war in Israel's history, leading to the final conflict that only God can win. As the smoke clears and the battlefield falls silent, Israel stands, unharmed, undefeated. But victory comes with a chilling realization. The world's support was silent. No one came to help. And the silence of her allies speaks louder than the thunder of war. Because the next threat isn't just the armies outside, it's the isolation within. No one comes, no one speaks, no one defends. In the hour of greatest danger, when Israel cries out for help, every ally turns their face away. Doors once open are now bolted shut. The world watches, but does nothing. Ezekiel 38 reveals a chilling detail. Not a single nation rises to Israel's defense during the invasion. The United States, her strongest historical ally, remains silent. Former enemies stay eerily neutral. Arab states that once threatened war now observe with folded arms. It's not just political betrayal, it's prophetic fulfillment. Every earthly support crumbles, forcing Israel to look higher than governments or treaties. The silence of man echoes loudly, but heaven is not quiet. Thunder rumbles in the unseen realm. The armies see only vulnerability, but they've underestimated the one who neither slumbers nor sleeps. Israel is not swallowed, not because of her might, but because God is not finished with her. But just as one danger fades, another one begins to rise. A peace treaty is coming, but it's not a rescue, it's a trap. The greatest threat to Israel will not come bearing weapons, but a pen. A peace accord will be signed, broadcast to the world with flashing cameras and thunderous applause. Leaders will embrace, the media will declare a new age, and heaven will fall silent. Daniel 9:27 foretells it plainly, a 7-year covenant confirmed by the Antichrist. Not a spontaneous agreement, but a reinforcement of what is already forming, a deception dressed in diplomacy. This treaty will mark the beginning of the final prophetic countdown. The clock of the tribulation will start ticking, dividing history into 2 equal halves. 3.5 years of false peace, followed by 3.5 years of horror, unlike anything the earth has known. In the beginning, it will seem hopeful. Access to holy sites may be granted, sacrifices may resume, religious leaders may even call it a miracle of unity. But halfway through the 7 years, the truth will be revealed. The one who brought peace will desecrate it. He will enter the Holy of Holies, declare himself God, and demand worship. The covenant will be shattered, and the final descent into chaos will begin. It all starts with a signature, but it will end in fire. Jerusalem will burn, nations will tremble, and those who trusted in the agreement will be left stunned and betrayed. This isn't just a betrayal of Israel, it is a declaration of war against God himself. To explore further, we examine the 2 halves of the tribulation. What exactly happens when the treaty is broken? What role does the temple play in revealing the true nature of the Antichrist? And how does this counterfeit peace compare with the authentic covenants God made with Abraham and David? Covenants that never fail. And what if this treaty was signed next year? What would it mean for the church, for Israel, and for the rest of the world watching from the sidelines? The world breathes a sigh of relief, but in that breathless silence, God sends a voice. 2 voices, actually. 2 witnesses, lit like flames, crying out from the center of Jerusalem, warning the world that what just began is not peace, but the beginning of judgment. 2 figures stand in the heart of Jerusalem, and the world can do nothing to silence them. Cameras capture their every move. Crowds gather to heckle, to curse, to fear. But no bullet, no bomb, no threat can touch them until heaven itself allows it. For 1,260 days, the voices of 2 witnesses thunder across the city. Their words cut like swords. Their presence disrupts the normal flow of the world. They shut the heavens so that it will not rain. They strike the earth with plagues, turning rivers to blood. Fire proceeds from their mouths, consuming those who would harm them. Revelation 11 speaks clearly. These 2 are God's final messengers before the full fury of judgment is unleashed. Their authority mirrors that of Elijah and Moses. The former called down fire and shut the skies. The latter turned water to blood and called plagues upon Egypt. These 2 do not come to comfort the world, they come to confront it. And the world hates them for it. Day after day, they cry out against sin, against false religion, against the rise of a counterfeit Messiah. The media mocks them. Governments label them threats. The people of the earth call them monsters, but they cannot be stopped. Not yet. Then, at the appointed hour, everything changes. A beast rises from the abyss, empowered by Satan himself, and kills them. Their bodies lie in the streets of Jerusalem, unburied, shamed. The whole world watches. The airwaves fill with celebration. People exchange gifts, hold parties, and declare victory over these troublemakers. It is the only moment of global joy in the entire tribulation period. But heaven is not done. After 3.5 days, a breath of life from God enters them. Before the stunned eyes of the world, they stand up. Terror grips the city. And then a voice from heaven calls out, and they ascend visibly into the clouds. At that very hour, a great earthquake shakes Jerusalem. Thousands die, and for the first time, some give glory to the God of heaven. This is no myth. This is not poetic metaphor. This is a future event etched in divine prophecy that will play out exactly as written. To explore further, consider the identity of these witnesses. Could they be Elijah and Enoch, men who never died? Or Elijah and Moses, the two who stood with Christ on the Mount of Transfiguration? How do they compare with John the Baptist, who cried out in the wilderness as the forerunner of Christ? Are these two the final voice before the King returns? Imagine the global news coverage, CNN, Al Jazeera, YouTube live streams, covering their deaths, celebrating their silence, only to recoil in horror at their resurrection. When the voice of heaven is slain, the voice of hell rises. And with that, the Antichrist steps fully into the spotlight, not as a diplomat or peacemaker, but as the deceiver and destroyer foretold from the beginning. He made a covenant of peace, but now he demands worship. In the very temple he once agreed to protect, the Antichrist strides into the Holy of Holies and declares himself divine. He erects an image of himself and demands that all bow before it. This is the abomination of desolation, spoken of by the prophet Daniel and confirmed by Jesus Christ as the sign that the Great Tribulation has entered its darkest phase. Halfway through the 7-year covenant, at the 3.5-year mark, he breaks his promise and unleashes fury. The Jewish people, finally awakened to the truth, refuse to bow. They see the deception, the blasphemy, the grotesque perversion of holiness, and they reject it. That refusal is met with violent retaliation. A new Holocaust begins, not confined to one region, but global in scope. The Antichrist mobilizes every resource of his empire to hunt down and annihilate the people of the covenant. But prophecy declares that not all will perish. Revelation 12 reveals a supernatural escape. As the dragon chases the woman clothed with the sun, a symbol of Israel, she is given the wings of a great eagle. She flees into the wilderness, into a place prepared by God, where she is nourished and protected for 1,260 days. There, hidden from the eyes of the world, a remnant survives, not by their own strength, but by the hand of the Almighty. The rest of the world descends into chaos. The Antichrist statue speaks with demonic power. All who refuse to worship it are sentenced to death. A global system of surveillance, economic control, and totalitarian power spreads rapidly. The mark of the beast is introduced, without which no one can buy or sell. Humanity is being sifted, those who bow and those who bleed. Meanwhile, in the barren silence of the wilderness, God sustains his people, just as he did in the days of Moses. Manna may not fall from the sky, but divine provision flows. These are not just survivors, they are the future inheritors of a promise older than time. This moment echoes history. Just as Pharaoh tried to crush Israel before the Exodus, the Antichrist now tries to crush them before the return. Just as Haman plotted genocide in Persia, now the beast plots it on a global scale. But always, God preserves a remnant. To explore deeper, we must understand what the abomination that causes desolation truly signifies. It is not just a political betrayal, but a cosmic violation of the sacred. The temple, meant to house the presence of God, becomes the stage for Satan's mimicry. Who is the Antichrist in this phase? Is he still a man, or has he become the full vessel of the dragon? Daniel and Revelation offer parallel timelines, showing that this midpoint marks a shift not only in politics, but in spiritual dimensions. The world is no longer under the illusion of peace. Now it burns under the mask of worship. Just when it seems darkness has claimed total victory, just 3 days after the world celebrated the death of God's final prophets, something happens that no one anticipated, something that even the beast cannot control, and it will shake the heavens and the earth. The cameras are still rolling, the live stream is uninterrupted. Around the world, billions of eyes remain fixed on the same grisly scene, 2 lifeless bodies lying in the streets of Jerusalem. They've been there for 3.5 days, unmoved, unburied, mocked. The world has celebrated their death. News anchors call it the end of an era. But then, without warning, the impossible happens. A breath, a tremor in the dust. The bodies move, they rise to their feet. Panic sweeps through the crowd. Some scream, some fall silent, others run. But none can deny what they are seeing. These were the 2 prophets the world hated, now alive again before the eyes of every nation. There is no resuscitation, no CPR, no intervention. This is not a medical miracle. This is resurrection. And then a voice from heaven calls out, "Come up here." Without hesitation, the 2 men ascend, rising slowly into the sky, clothed not in death, but in glory. The camera lenses can't look away. Satellites lock in. Commentators go speechless. Around the world, people stop scrolling and simply watch. For the first time in a long time, the world holds its breath, not in anticipation, but in awe. But heaven is not finished. As the 2 witnesses vanish into the clouds, the ground beneath Jerusalem begins to shake. A violent earthquake strikes. Buildings crumble, streets split apart. 1/10 of the city is destroyed. Thousands are killed. And those who survive, they don't cheer, they don't retaliate, they give glory to the God of heaven. This moment is not just about vindication, it is a declaration. Death is not the final authority. The beast may have triumphed for 3 days, but his crown was borrowed and his victory hollow. The God who called light out of darkness now calls his witnesses out of the grave. To explore deeper, imagine how global media would react to this event. A simulated live stream, spliced with real-time social media comments, could reveal the shock, confusion, and awakening in hearts across the planet. More than that, this resurrection foreshadows the greater one still to come, the resurrection of all the saints at the return of Christ. These 2 men are not just symbols, they are harbingers. When heaven moves, nothing can stop it. No decree from Antichrist, no lie of the enemy, no silence of the world can bury the voice of God. And now, that voice grows louder, because the next time the sky opens, it won't just be for 2 men, It will be for the king himself. He left from the Mount of Olives, and he will return to that very mountain, not as the suffering servant, but as the triumphant king. The prophets did not speak in riddles. Zechariah 14 declares it plainly. On that day his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives, and when his feet touch the earth, the mountain will split in two, from east to west, forming a vast valley. The ground will tremble, the skies will roar, and the age of rebellion will come to its final breath. This is not symbolic. It is the climax of history. As the armies of the world gather against Jerusalem, prepared to annihilate, the heavens open. The one they pierced returns, not quietly, not in secret, but with blazing glory. His robe is dipped in blood. Upon his head are many crowns, and his name is called the Word of God. With a sword proceeding from his mouth, he strikes the nations. Antichrist falls. His coalition collapses. The mightiest militaries melt like wax before the heat of his presence. He comes not as a negotiator, not as a reformer, but as judge and king. He doesn't plead for peace, he establishes it. He doesn't request allegiance, he demands it. Every power that stood against him is silenced. Every tongue that mocked him is hushed, and every knee, whether in defiance or in awe, bows. This moment is not a fable. It is the fulfillment of every promise, every longing, every prophecy. The Messiah who was lifted from the Mount of Olives in Acts chapter 1 returns exactly as the angels foretold. In the same way you saw him go. And when he returns, the war ends in a breath. His eyes, like flames of fire, pierce through every lie. His voice, like many waters, drowns out every false song. This is not just a scene of victory, it is the coronation of eternity. To explore deeper, compare his first and second comings. Once he rode a donkey, now a white horse. Once he bore our sin, now he bears a scepter. Trace the timeline, from the cries of Armageddon to the fall of Antichrist to the rise of the true king. History is not spiraling into chaos, it's marching toward a throne. And now that darkness is defeated, a new kingdom is born, not by ballots, not by councils, but by the sovereign hand of the Almighty. The King has returned, and the world will never be the same. Every empire will pass, every flag will fall, but one kingdom will remain, eternal, unshaken, and ruled in righteousness. And at its center is not Rome, not New York, not Beijing, but Jerusalem. From this city, the King of Kings will reign for 1,000 years, and the world will finally taste what true peace feels like. Isaiah paints the picture. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, and a child will lead them. There will be no more war, no more exploitation, no more cries of hunger. The weapons of man will be beaten into plowshares, and justice will roll like a mighty river. Christ himself will sit on the throne of David, fulfilling every word spoken through the prophets. Those who endured through the great tribulation, the faithful remnant, will enter this kingdom, and more than that, they will reign with him. The martyrs, the overcomers, the ones who did not bow to the beast, they will wear crowns not as trophies, but as tools to serve and shepherd the nations alongside their king. No longer will the world be led by the prideful or the corrupt, but by those shaped in humility and fire. This is not myth. This is not metaphor. Revelation 20 speaks plainly of a 1,000-year reign where Satan is bound and Christ rules the earth. And though it is a time of joy and healing, it is not yet the end. After the millennium comes one final test, one final rebellion, but it is swiftly crushed. Then comes the great white throne judgment, when every soul will stand before the Almighty and books will be opened. And after judgment, glory. John saw it. He wrote of a new heaven and a new earth, of a city descending from heaven, prepared like a bride. No more pain, no more death, no more sorrow. For the former things will have passed away. The river of life will flow through the New Jerusalem, and the tree of life will bear fruit for the healing of the nations. The throne of God and of the Lamb will be in that city, and his servants will serve him face to face. To explore deeper, is the millennium literal or symbolic? What kind of life will people live in the 1,000-year kingdom? Who are the ones who reign with Christ? And how are they chosen? The answers aren't just theological, they are invitations to prepare our hearts now. Because the story doesn't end in ruin, it ends in restoration. And this new world, this kingdom of light and holiness, is not just for others, it's for you. But the question remains, when that day comes, where will you stand? There will be no more neutrality, no more delays. The final choice will not be made in a courtroom or cast in a ballot. It will be made in the heart. When the King returns, every soul will fall into one of two camps, those who bowed willingly in love, or those who stood in defiance until it was too late. History is approaching its final sentence. The prophecies are no longer distant shadows, they are unfolding before our eyes, and at the very end, there will be no spectators. Everyone will take a side. There is no hiding when heaven opens and the Lamb appears in glory. The gates of the holy city will not swing open for hesitation. Only those whose robes are washed, who heard and responded to the call, will enter. And yet, even now, the invitation still stands. Where do you stand? Will you be one who kneels before the King, or one who rejects him and watches the doors close? It is not too late, but time is short. Choose life, so that you and your descendants may live. Deuteronomy 30:19.